Katie, was it the 5282 number that you're calling?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm going to keep myself muted and continue to try to call him.
All right. Do you want to let everyone else in and we'll get the meeting started and we'll
Yeah,
deal with it from there.
everybody's everybody has been admitted in.
All right. Very good.
Good. I'll call the meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. From the commission, we have Lisa Cooper, myself, uh, Kelly Bloom, Mary Peniston, and David Westmoreland. And staff, we have Brian Bedoli. Uh, First order of business is a roll call, which I just did. Next is public participation. Do we have anyone out there, Katie, that public?
I do not believe so. I think everybody is
I
here
don't
is with
see
the
anyone.
applicant. I do not,
Okay,
and I haven't received any
all right.
emails prior.
Seeing there are none, we move on to administration. There's no administration items on the agenda for tonight. So we'll go to item number 5, business, and it's design review of 21-23 Isaac Street. And we're here to consider for approval of proposed design work for 2023 Isaac Street with it. And we have additional documents at the website. So I'll open the meeting. Brian, turn it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr.
So I think
Milligan
first,
is there.
yeah. So I think for the show of the house today, I think what we'll do is we'll hear a presentation from the applicant so they can kind of go over their project. We'll hear from our third-party design reviewer, who has a number of comments related to the report. And then I believe Attorney Blank is here as well. And I don't know if you wanted to provide any remarks in response to the third-party design reviewer, if that works for everybody. All right. So with that, I think we'll open it up to the applicant. If you guys want to, if you need to share the screen, let me know. If you want to give just a brief overview of your project, the proposal, and kind of where you stand today with the development review.
So good evening, Adam Blank. I'm the attorney for the applicant Wall Street Opportunity Fund LLC, owner of 21 and 23 Isaac Street. With me is Ray Sullivan, the project architect. Ray's going to give you a quick overview of the architecturals in just a couple of minutes. And then Ray and I will run through a few of the, I'll say, decision points for you folks tonight. Also with me is Craig Flaherty, the project engineer, in case any engineering questions arise. And Jason Enters and Jason Milligan are also on the Zoom on behalf of the property owner in case questions come up that you need information from the property owner on. I've got a few minutes to just kind of give you a quick overview of the project and where things stand before we get into some of the nitty gritty. Sort of big picture, it's obviously this is within the Wall Street West Avenue redevelopment area and the redevelopment plan, which is designated this a blighted or deteriorated neighborhood. And the purpose of your plan is to help revitalize the neighborhood. And we have a 210 unit extended stay hotel with 4 live work units that we believe is going to make a great impact on the neighborhood and really help move it forward in connection with the Wall Street Place POCO project right next door. If I can share the screen. There we go. Okay, so you should have the aerial up. I suspect, but just in case that you're all familiar with 23 and then 21 is here, Isaac Street. And it's on Isaac Street, but it also is on Leonard, but the address is Isaac, but it goes from Isaac across to Leonard. The Isaac Street is a dead end. It just comes in and ends here. Currently, this is just that paved parking lot with about a 4,000 square foot retail plaza that currently exists. That sits right, sort of in the shadows of the I think it's been restarted, but Wall Street Place POCO phase 1 and phase 2 is over here. What's proposed is a 6-story, 210 unit apartment, extended stay hotel building. This is looking from sort of the end of Isaac Street up at the proposed project. This would be the Wall Street Place building, the phase 1. Looking from Leonard back up towards the property, you see this is the facade on Leonard. There's this public amenity area here, and that's the Wall Street Place building on Isaac that you can see straight through to. And here's sort of an overhead shot. Again, you're looking down Isaac Street, amenity area here that's greened up, and then Leonard Street over here. 6 stories set back at the 4th. The live work units I should mention, so 4 live work units on Leonard Street. Your redevelopment plan actually specifically calls for live work units in the Wall Street West Avenue neighborhood, and it actually specifically identifies Leonard Street as where they should be located. So that's right in keeping with your plan. And as you've noted previously, Norwalk is sort of short on hotels. So this fills a general need in Norwalk for hotels. The building itself is proposed with a fairly few amount of amenities, with the idea being to try to get these guests out into the neighborhood, supporting the local businesses, which we think is great for both the neighborhood in general. And of course, Mr. Milligan has some interest in other properties along the area that hopefully this will help support a lot of his other tenants by getting them out to those restaurants and retailers. We think it's a significant improvement for the neighborhood. As I mentioned, the existing site is pretty much entirely asphalt, impervious, not a lot of green. It will be increased from about, I think, 0.5% is pervious currently to about 20% after we're done with the work, including about 36 drainage galleries for water retention and stormwater treatment that currently don't exist. And the structure that's proposed would be LEED Silver certifiable, and a whole bunch of other sustainability improvements proposed for the site. With the addition, of course, the new landscaping that'll come around the sides of the building on this side and down here. We're in the CD4. This for the planning and zoning. It's a site plan. These are all permitted as of right uses under the zoning regulations. And so your sort of role in the process is limited, but it's important, and that's to determine whether what's being proposed complies with your design review guidelines. And they really are their guidelines. They have some flexibility for you. You've retained, Bob, I'm going to say Bob G because I butcher his last name every time, but from DeCarlo and Dahl to do a peer review on the architecturals for compliance. And, we sort of started working with Bob and really with planning and zoning and with redevelopment almost 4 months ago on this project. There've been quite a bit of back and forths, and our original plans were modified, I think, fairly substantially along the way, based upon feedback that we received about design review standards, zoning compliance, and just architectural preference. So we've really tried to work cooperatively with the various departments to get to a project that we think is better than where we started, but also that kind of makes just about everybody happy, or as happy as we can. And through that process, I think we're down to, I think Bob in his peer review had about 12 items of, I'll say, concern, or that he thought might not comply with the design review guidelines or were sort of interest, whereas everything else essentially complied. We've provided a response to that in writing that hopefully you have, but we're going to pull some of that up on screen and let Ray walk you through some of those points. But of those sort of 12 items, I think 6 of them or so we've agreed that we'll address and that are fine, no argument from us on, which only leaves, there's about 6 items though that we'd like to talk with you specifically about, that we'd like you to allow us to let the plans remain sort of as submitted with respect to those 6 items. And that's really all that we're down to of sort of, I'll say, disagreements. So with that, I'm gonna just let me stop sharing. And if I'll just have Ray take like 2 or 3 minutes to show the architectural plans. And then if it's okay with you all, we'll pull up our response to Bob's review and just run through the handful of items that I'll say remain outstanding. But if you have other questions or concerns that either I haven't addressed yet or that Ray doesn't address, please shout them out at any time. With that, Ray.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that now. So what I'd like to do is just briefly discuss kind of the concept of the plan, how the building design, how the site plan, evolved. When Jason first came to me and we looked at the property, I felt that Isaac Street was, a little tired, a secondary street. There wasn't a lot of definition to it. And my initial reaction was, I wanted to create a sense of arrival there. If you pull down Isaac Street, I wanted you to be able to get to this building and felt like you got somewhere, like you arrived. And so we actually envisioned a roundabout here, but the only thing we can control is our own property. And so we've got ourselves kind of a 3/4 roundabout, which is Isaac Street, in which case, we can turn around and go back out. We've got drop-off areas for the extended stay. And if the roundabout happens in the long run, great. But right now, self-sufficiently, we work. So what that did is it created, kind of this curved shape here. We looked at other shapes. We looked at this building coming straight across. We looked at it coming over close to the property line down here. We looked at not having this wing in the back. But in the end, Jason thought that this was kind of the most conducive site plan for ourselves and for the city and our neighbors.
And Ray, I'll just point out, because since it was raised, I'm not even sure that Jason's aware of this yet, but we have been trying to, Jason's aware that we'd love to see this as a full roundabout. But obviously we don't control the Wall Street Place McClutchie piece. And has been a desire by that property owner to make this a sort of full roundabout. And I know the Planning and Zoning Office is in the process of setting up a meeting next week with them to try to make that work. We can't promise it because it's not on our property, but we are working as best we can with the city and with the other property owner, because we think everyone would benefit if that was a full one, but it works. It works as a half roundabout, but it would be nicer for the neighborhood if it was full.
Thanks, Adam. So as we turn to the elevations, if we look at the Isaac Street elevation, obviously this shape, helped, create our building frontage. And so, here's the main building frontage with the main entrance, and the partial, roundabout. The main entrance we saw as the focal point. It was the front of the building, and it was reflective, of the curve. The focal point actually aligns with an existing areaway that walks out in between 77 Wall Street and the theater to get out to Wall Street. We have envisions of how that works in the future too. And the elevators in the building are so positioned so that every time you open up an elevator, when the door opens up, you look out these stacked lobbies here. So you're looking out that vista way and out towards Wall Street, out towards Norwalk. And so, I think this curved shape, helped define the building, helped define the basic design, and I think, enhances Jason's view of really wanting to kind of pull Norwalk together down here. He's got other properties he'd like to see developed. There's a lot of activity coming online down here, and we saw this as as creating a nice, sense of place, focal point back on this somewhat secondary street. The westerly elevation and plan is formed by this public amenity space. So, this public amenity area exceeds 26 feet, and it's filled with paver walkway, landscaping.
26 feet in width.
26 feet in width. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's a nice public space, with paver walkways, benches, lighting, landscaping, and really creates a nice sense of space here, and actually allows 18 Isaac to maintain a frontage. Typically, I mean, we didn't need to build this curve up here, and we could have come across and we could have come right down the property line here. But again, as neighbors, we didn't think that was the right thing to do. I would never put the building all the way to the property line anyway. If I did anything, I would have held it 10 feet back, so that we can create, proper light and ventilation, up in the building, which needs to be a certain distance off the property line. But, in the end, Jason saw this as being the right thing to do for the neighborhood. It creates this, really nice, exterior space, for the users of 23 Isaac Street as well as for the public. The other thing that happens is that down at the southerly end of this public realm area, that's actually a secondary entrance or lobby into the building. So quickly, the Leonard Street elevation, it creates, with the live workspaces, creates, street front activity, brings the building, right to the street. This elevation kind of is a little bit more simpler than the other because it's a straight line, and we've got kind of these more contemporary, deeper colored, bookends, framing in the center of the building, which is slightly less colored, a little less contemporary, trying to create a separate look on the building. We also create access into the parking garage back here. The other noteworthy point is that this kind of southwest corner is actually what we feel a nice shape. It's a dynamic shape, I think. And it is a piece of the building that you'll be able to see vantage points driving down West Avenue. You're not going to be able to see the whole thing. You're not going to be able to see the whole thing all the time. But when you drive down West Avenue and you go in between pockets of buildings, you're going to see that building back there, and you're going to see that shape. And we're hopeful that it creates interest and draws people back to this area. Again, here's the aerial with the partial turnaround, the public realm. Leonard Street is back here. We do have a substantial number of solar panels, up in the roof, and we've got a rooftop amenity area, for the building users as well. And as required, from the fourth floor up, the building steps back 10 feet. So we have it along here, and we have it, back on Leonard Street as well. The building has 5 residential floors. It's got 42 units on each floor. You know what, maybe I will just go to a floor plan that might make it a little bit easier to understand this. So here's the typical floor plan. There are 42 units on each floor. About half of them, down to unit, 224, are smaller units, and they average, somewhere between 425 and 475 square feet. And then from, unit 25 back to 42, they tend to be larger, and they're ranging, as low as, in the 675 square feet all the way up to 960, and there might be, one odd size that's a little bit bigger than that. The parking space, there are 2 levels of parking, and there's 163 parking spaces, in the garage, plus 4 outside. So that, by way of brief overview, is the building. Here are the setbacks. And Adam, should I turn it back to you, or do we want to go
Yeah.
kind of deeper into?
No, I mean, unless the commissioners want to hear more about the layouts, but we can maybe turn it back over and hit a few of, I know Bob hasn't presented yet, but let's hit a few of what Bob's points were.
Okay.
I can share my screen and go through the issues that at least he's raised. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
It is.
Okay.
I have one question. The building next to you, across from that walkway, I believe that's Audiotronics, is it not?
Yes.
And their frontage will be on the walkway?
Let me try to find a better.
Yes, their frontage is on their walkway. They've got a covered walkway along the front.
Okay. And
Yeah.
where is parking for them? Will be behind
They
at your building?
they have we zoom in from here. So the parking,
That's not actually their frontage. Their frontage is on Isaacs.
it's this. This is the building's frontage. Their frontage is here. And they've got some loading and spaces back here. I don't know, it's the building is leased. I don't know how the leases spell out what gets used for who, but this is their area essentially back here. And then to the extent that we have public parking here, or there are other places for public parking, that's where they can park.
Okay. And the underground is there as well.
Yep, they're back here. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So then let me just pull up. So I'm gonna try to just hit, I think, Ray, we'll go through a few of these points on your peer reviewer said, asked if we could locate the building entry piers inboard of the inside curb edge and align the face of the building above the outside face of the piers below. Ray, can I stop sharing and can you pull that up and you explain why we've done it the way we have?
Sure. All right, so. So we have this this lobby frontage here. We've got piers
Didn't
out.
share. You try
Oh, I
share
did-
once more?
Oh, I'm sorry. There. Sorry about that. So we've got the lobby frontage back here. We've got a sidewalk, and then we have piers, along here. We have this face of the building right here aligns perfectly with the line of the columns. We have a slight projection here and here, somewhere slightly less than 2 feet that go out beyond the column, and that the column is actually on the edge of the curb, so it doesn't interfere with parking. It's actually kind of right on the edge of the curb. We like the slight projection here and here because it helps accentuate, the center of the building. We actually had a much larger projection, and in discussions with Bob, we thought, yes, we agree, it's too large a projection. But we're very comfortable kind of with this minimal projection that's here and here, which is actually a little bit less of where bays occurs on the building. But so we do have piers. We do have a covered kind of arcade walkway, and those piers sit on the edge of the sidewalk. They're not kind of in the drive aisle. They're right on the edge.
All right, so that was one. we'll bounce back and forth with you in May.
Okay.
Can you just stop sharing and then I'll share and we'll just flip it. So then, we were asked to increase the differentiation between the window end blocks, and the infill blocks. Which we have no objection to, doing that. Then the next one was redesigning the cornices in a small fashion, and the cornices. So right, these are up at the top of the building. I'll let Ray pull it up. As Ray's pulling up the cornices, just keep in mind that what we're talking about are sort of inches of detail, 70 feet above the ground, and I think they're going to be hard to be able to discern the difference from what's been proposed. But Ray, you want to pull it up and share?
Yes. So your previous comment, Adam, was that Bob had suggested that these infill panels here on the in this kind of redwood color theme be a darker color, and so we've actually changed that. We haven't sent that to Bob yet, but so we've actually changed that per his request. And then when we talk about some of the cornices and whatnot, I think we have a fairly healthy cornice up here, made up of bent metal trim, it sits on real trim, and brackets, and we have that, we've had that more demonstrated on the kind of more contemporary edges of the building, and they become a little bit more simpler on the more simpler sections, of the building. This particular section, is like it's actually 4 feet 5 inches tall, so it's pretty substantial. This one's a little bit less. It's more like 2'6". Bob had some recommendations about changing some dimensions, and I think there's possibly adding some molding trims and things like that up in here. And we thought that because of the contemporary nature of the design, we'd rather kind of keep it simpler and straighter and cleaner lines. That's it, Adam.
All right. If you stop, I'll share again. We'll go to the next point. Revise the string trim design, projecting Isaac Street 2-bay element to differentiate it from adjacent trim.
Right.
Can you?
Yeah, I'm in the process of doing that. Let me
Yeah.
So what we find all the way around the building is that there's a pretty kind of definitive line of where the first floor meets the second floor, where the fourth floor meets the fifth floor, or where the building meets the the parapet roof. And that's a pretty significant dimension. I think it's a little over 3 feet thick. And we kind of like that. We don't want to, we don't want to break the plane of that band around the building. And there's a fair amount of movement on the building. This projects out, comes back, it's coming around the curve, it works its way, down the end of the building, as it goes from the deeper color section of the building to the lighter color section of the building, the band changes a little bit, but it's still in the same plane. Much the way, up here, we've got, kind of, this band, it transitions to a smaller, more delicate band here or here. But we do like the band to stay in alignment. That would be our preference.
All right, next, if you stop share, I'll share. The zoning regs, and by the way, some of these that we're running through, it's a joint, this is I'll say a joint review between planning and zoning and redevelopment. You've both used Bob as the peer reviewer, so his comments, some relate to zoning concerns and some relate to redesign review guidelines. One of his concerns was about calculations for window area as a percentage of facade. We did perform those and provide those, and it complies with the zoning regs. Specified doors to be used for balcony access. We've now specified the doors or similar that will be used. Then the next one is submit revised designs incorporating a full thickness 4-inch minimum width trim board overlapping a window frame. And that relates to a zoning regulation that asks for 4-inch trim being provided. So can you, Ray or
Yes.
Jason,
I,
answer?
yeah, I can take this, at first anyway. So if you can see that, this particular window is actually in Willard Place, that is, over in Norwalk. And what it is a heavily reinforced fiberglass window. It's an extremely sturdy window. The what happens is there's the extrusion on the sides, top and bottom, are just shy of 3.5 inches. And what it does do is it provides a real kind of sturdy frame on the building, which I think is what the window trim is trying to, do the same. And the good part about this, it's integral. If you put up trim, the joints in the trim can move a little bit, takes maintenance, but in this case, it's all in one product. So it's this is not the only project where we've used kind of these larger, and internationally, provided window, but it's an extremely, durable product and one that we, actually, prefer to use. So one small comment is that it says that we're supposed to have 4-inch trim. Well, you can't have 4-inch trim. You buy a 1x4, it's 3.5 inches. And this frame, from sash, once you get to the sash and you look at that frame, it is fractions of an inch from the 3.5 inches. So we think we're solving the same thing in a more durable, consistently colored product than applying a secondary piece of trim. That would be our preference.
All right.
Jason, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I just want to add that I've used these windows, which come from Europe, and they're not inexpensive. The reason we prefer them is they're highly energy efficient, and their noise blocking ability is beyond what's being manufactured here in the United States. And using these, it basically already has a trim, so it's very difficult to say you're going to add another piece of trim around trim that already exists. So it's essentially a window, because they're casements, that already comes trimmed. So the regulation becomes, very, I don't want to say wasn't completely thought out, but with these type of windows, it doesn't really work.
And can we, since we're here and we're showing this, can one of the other items, and I'll show whatever the exact language that was raised, but dealt with in I think it's in your design standards, but it's certainly in the zoning regs, talks about materials to be used. And one of the materials we're proposing in addition to these windows is porcelain. Do you want to talk, Jason or Ray, about the porcelain that we're proposing?
Well, I'll quickly talk about it, and Jason actually is maintaining it, so he knows more about it than I do, actually. But so in Willard, this is a porcelain tile, same type of tile we're talking about using. One thing to know about the tile is that the tile is adhered with a metal mesh and a mortar, so it is securely attached to the substrate. So a lot of our building on the lower level, at Isaac Street, is concrete. Some of it's going to be steel stud. It's all going to be non-combustible. So I understand the comment, and the comments or the regulation's a good one. Look, we don't want any substandard materials down low. We certainly don't want drive it down low that could take a beating. But this is an extremely durable material. It's almost an inch thick. And I think the inch thickness is a little bit irrelevant when it gets mortared to masonry or another non-combustible material. It becomes kind of part of that wall. And I think that porcelain tile is a very durable tile. It's a very durable product for down low. And Jason's been using it successfully. And I believe, and Adam, you can correct me, I think there are others. There are other developers and architects in town who are trying to advance the same thing.
Yeah, so with the porcelain, I think that probably the word porcelain, when somebody hears it, they think of something fragile because it's sort of, you know, people had little porcelain, tchotchkes and things like that. Porcelain today is an excellent product. I've got a big piece of it on my lap that is almost an inch thick. It's just like we've used. The reason that it's so good is it doesn't absorb water. It is more durable than if you're going to use stone on the face of a building, you're going to be using a stone veneer, like if you're going to use marble or granite, and it's going to be the same thickness as this, but it's going to crack a lot easier. And the beauty of all the porcelain products that are out now is that you can get a million different colors and a million different textures. So I think with this regulation saying that it either needs to be brick or it needs to be 4 inches of stone, nobody's ever going to use a piece of 4-inch stone. It's just financially not feasible. It would, if somebody's going to use stone, their face stone, or if you're using, granite slabs or whatever, they're the same thickness as this. So I have this on a storage building in Norwalk, and I have it on the Willard Development in Norwalk, and it's been there for a year and a half. We were so confident in it, and again, Ray was describing the way that it's installed. Wire mesh goes up, and then a scratch coat goes on it, which gives it beef, and then another coat of masonry cement goes on there, and this gets embedded in that. And I just think it's a super durable product, and I think that I think it's a mistake, and if I understand correctly, I think that planning and zoning is rethinking that regulation a little bit. I think it's a mistake to eliminate being able to use something like this, because you can get a whole bunch of different looks and a really, really protective and solid base material. And I understand the regulation. I like the regulation. I just don't like the limitation to just brick or stone. I think it's just a touch short-sighted. That's all.
And Jason, you might also note that the porcelain tile is used at the entrance into the parking garage at Willard, right? And so it really is exposed, and it's held up wonderfully.
We've had no problems with it. We put it everywhere that we thought. Like our first thoughts were to use, masonry block, some sort of textured block or something. But by the way, those blocks are hollow, and if they get hit, it's a big disaster. So when we found this, which is actually imported from Poland, we were just blown away by the product, and we put it everywhere we thought there might be contact.
All right. So number 8 on here was submit knee wall construction detail, which was fine for us to do. The number 9 was asking for 4-inch brick or natural stone. Again, I think you just heard about the porcelain that we're proposing. 10, and I think there's only, well, there's a few, but there's not that many, because I think we agreed to a few more coming down the list. 10 was reproportion all parking structure wall openings, except those for vehicle entrances, to have similar proportions and size windows to above. Ray, you want to just talk about the entrances for just a minute?
So I'm sorry, which?
All parking structure wall openings.
Oh, well, that was more about the alignment, I think, of the piers and the openings up above.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I am looking for
Actually, this is the last one. The rest of them we agree on, so
Yeah,
just
so,
about done.
the file's so big, I had to split it up, so I've just gotta.
Can I just ask a question while you're doing that? Is the intent to use the porcelain tile over the entire building? In just different colors, or are there different materials? I couldn't really tell. based
No,
on
it's just at the base. There's different materials all over the
just the
place.
base.
But-
You're using brick above.
No,
And
that's
some other-
actually a cementatious Nichiha product up above.
Uh-huh.
And there's a Hardy product
Yep.
up above as well. I've used all of these materials in the last 3 jobs I've done. They're fantastic materials.
So the porcelain is only on the base, along the base.
Only along the base, yeah.
Only along the base.
It's a darker gray. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. It's a darker gray porcelain than what I used at Willard, but it's the same product.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's down here. So, Bob had made a suggestion and it was a good one, can we get the openings, in the garage to, align with the windows up above? So, we've kind of got this rhythm of 2 single windows, a double, and then a space, 2 single windows, a double, then a space, and the same on and on. So we took that element, we brought it straight down, and we created a pier there. And we did that each time so that we can kind of create a rhythm that is consistent between the lower openings and the upper openings. So I think that there could be a spot here or there that we may still need to look at. What happens is that when you have a opening into the garage, there's little you can do about moving openings around, and we kind of made it as aligned as possible. But I thought this was one of the bigger items that Bob was looking at, and so we were able to kind of take that and align all of that.
All right.
Can I ask the parking, the garage is supposed to have something like, I'm not sure the exact number, 88 parking spaces that are open to the public, available exclusively for the public, I think it says. Can we see, or do your drawings show how the public would enter the parking lot and walk out? Is there walkways and so forth for them to do that?
You're gonna go through it, right? There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of entrance and exits.
Okay. So,
So,
will they go through the building, or will they have it?
Yeah, so this is the entrance off of Isaac,
Okay,
and you can pull down and pull out onto Leonard.
okay,
So you and it's 2-way passage, so you can go either way, or you could pull down, you could pull straight in and go up to the upper level as well. So that if you do pull in and you are parking in this area, you can get over to, let's say you go into the building lobby here. You can go through the lobby, or you've got this access way to walk, all the way out, across the drive aisle and get out of the building. If you're parked down in this area, this is that secondary lobby that's down in the back. So you can walk your way over to that lobby, go through that, and then, out into the general public. So there are these 80 spaces that are here. There are 4 in front, and again, you can take this ramp and go up to the second level, and then there is a parking in the second level. We've got kind of the same circulation here. You can get to the stair and go down to that same opening. Here you can get into that lobby area, and go down through that same circulation path, or you can go into the second level of the lobby.
okay. So someone going to a restaurant on Wall Street wants to park here, has to go through the hotel or extended living quarters, Um,
No, there's several ways for
Oh.
them to get out.
okay.
Right.
all right.
So if you came in and you found a space right here, you would just walk from your space, and just go through the lobby out. And so if you had a space here and you weren't going to the hotel, you can walk across the drive aisle and you can exit the building there.
Okay.
I mean, you can walk down the drive aisles, that's really not preferred, but you can get there.
All right. Thank you.
So I think, and anybody on the team jump in, but I think we sort of covered what we wanted to cover on that relates to the design review. And unless there's questions, we'll sort of turn it back to you guys.
Yeah, I think we'll give it over to Bob Griswold so he could present on his findings and any outstanding items. Bob, if you want to share the screen or have any remarks. I think you might be on mute, Bob.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, I'm okay now. Could you also pull up the appendix of the design review report? Because there's a useful piece of information in there. Okay, so no, see, I want to, yeah, let's go back to the first page, please. Okay, so the important thing here is, first of all, that the items that are still up in the air are items essentially aesthetic, or maybe documentary, but nothing that affects the functionality of the building. So that's important to understand. The second thing to understand is that we're working under the new form-based zoning, which actually complements and elaborates on the redevelopment design guidelines. I haven't found anything in zoning that contradicts the design guidelines, and the difference is you have hundreds of pages versus 25. So it covers a lot more conditions. And then the third thing is that, unlike ordinary zoning, this zoning is, like I say, is form-based, and what it's trying to do is to bring up an aesthetically harmonious city, much like a symphony is a aesthetically harmonious composition. So the argument is the argument of zoning says one thing, but we'd prefer to do another, to me does not hold weight, because the purpose of the new zoning and the design guidelines, which we haven't had as much meat on as we have now, is to create this harmonious whole. Let's go to the second page, please. Or can I do that? No. Okay. So one of the basic things that is in the new zoning and in the redevelopment design guidelines is that the appearance of a larger building should be broken up into smaller buildings that what appear to be smaller buildings, and that break should be at every level of the building, so that you don't think that there is a base that some things are just stuck down on top of. This is going to take some getting used to, I think, for our architects on these projects, but that's clearly what's intended. Okay, so for the first point now, for the arcade. So I'm sorry, you'll excuse me, I'm getting over some ailment, but what's also new to what we have now in zoning is that we have a lot of illustrations, and you cannot ignore the illustrations. They are equally important, if not quite as elaborated as the wording of zoning. So when we come to the arcade, for example, you see two things here. One, that the columns that are defining the arcade are pulled back some distance from the curb. And why would you do that? You would do that so that You can't hit the columns if you're maneuvering a car. If you're opening a door, you can't. You can't hit them. What dimension that should be, I don't know, but it should at least be at the inside edge of the curb. The second thing that you're seeing is that the columns align with the building face above. The building face doesn't project, but it's essentially a solid that has been carved out with this arcade. So I take that as being exactly what is intended as the design in the whole city. Next page, please. Okay. So so number 3, the cornices. For a traditional building, the cornices are the single most important element that defines its character. And you can't really say, well, it's up in the air, that it doesn't matter. You can look at Greek architecture, you can look at Roman architecture, you can look at neoclassical architecture. They all put considerable effort in visual refinement of those cornices. And I think that it's certainly appropriate here. Let's go to the next page. Get this right. Okay, so we got 2 images here. First of all, this is a little bit out of order, but the material that is used above the first level of 2123 Isaacs is essentially a clapboard. It might have a different profile or whatever, but essentially it's a neutral envelope, a functional, a utilitarian envelope. We've seen these all throughout New England, and it's perfectly fine as long as you have a couple of elements, as long as you have an entrance that gives definition and detail, as long as you have the casings around the windows, and as long as you have a cornice. And this is a very ordinary house, and it happens to have a nice entry, but it's saying those are important. Let's go to the next slide. All right, here's something that's more than 70 feet tall, and the cornice is clearly highly elaborated and highly important. So it's something that's worth spending more time on to get it right. Now, the next point is the bay, point 4. The way that the building design is right now is it's ambiguous. The piece that projects on Isaac Street is sort of a bay, but then it's sort of a continuation of the whole building, and you don't really know what it is one way or another. This is an extreme, but this building has 2 very clear bays which are distinct from the surrounding building, and importantly have a bottom that appears to support them and gives a visual strength to those bays. Again, something simple to do on this project, but it should be done. Let's see. Okay, 5 is the window area, and the zoning chart asserts a opening, and I have no reason to believe it's not right, but traditionally this is where we just get into the documentation. Traditionally, in all of these applications where there is something quantifiable, there is a calculation sheet, a drawing, something that says we're counting something this wide but this high, the percentage of this, that shows you how you calculate that, so that there's no disagreement in the future as to whether the building complies or not. I believe it complies, but you really need that, just like you do with open space or any other calculations on a building. Next page. Okay. Now, window casings. I'm sure those windows are wonderful windows, and I have no problem with the windows itself, but you may remember, in both redevelopment guidelines and now in zoning, there is the principle of rendered in texture and depth. If you just put a window in a flat plane with a flat piece of casing, you're not rendering in texture and depth. You can take those windows and add the trim, recess the window a little bit, start getting some life into the facade. And these are 2 pictures right out of the zoning as examples of what's expected to be seen for things like window trim. And if you don't do this, you're not going to get the cohesive environment that you're looking for. Okay, let's see. Okay, cladding. Can we go to the addendum, Brian?
I think John might be controlling that screen. John, do you have it?
From the original report, the final report? Bob?
Yes, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Okay, so the case was made that we should allow other materials other than stone and brick. And the easy answer is great, but it's not in zoning. And I think that while these porcelain panels may be very interesting, again, if you're looking for a cohesive built environment, you don't want every building to be radically different, and the porcelain panels are radically different. We're looking for an example that I put in the report just by chance of a hotel, so essentially the same building type as what we have here, hotel in Portland, Maine, and it's not a fancy hotel. It's a Hampton Inn. I stay there because I can afford to stay there. But when we pull it up, I think you'll see that richness in texture and depth that we have been looking
Jonathan,
for.
sorry to interrupt. This is Katie. I have it open if you want me to share my screen.
I got it too.
Okay, so let's go to like the second from last page. There we go. Okay, so this building has brick and not real stone, but cast stone. It's a hotel. It's a Hampton Inn. Like I say, I can afford to stay there, so that tells you it's very modest. But it has a lot of that richness. If you go back to the previous page, I think it's the previous page. No? Okay, let's go with 2 forward, please. Okay. Now look at how much you can get in 4 inches of masonry, and I would say that cast stone is absolutely equal to stone and could be added to zoning as appropriate. And look at that cornice or string course on the lower right and compare it to a early 20th century cornice door head from a building here in New Haven. You know, you can do so much with these materials if you just say it's an extrusion. You can do anything with an extrusion. You just have to work at it just a little bit. So no, I don't accept the idea that the porcelain panels will be good for Norwalk, even if they are utilitarian in the uses that they've been put. Now, I think there's one more point on that first document. I don't even remember what it is now. Oh, parking, yes. Okay, so next page. Okay, so the final point is parking. And the key here is that, and I think everybody agrees, that zoning says that parking structures are supposed to be wrapped with a wrapper building to hide the parking. We don't have that consistently on this building. So how do you approximate that? And the proposal is that it's approximated by a screen wall that continues the opening pattern of whatever is above down to those first parking levels. So that at least it doesn't look like a parking garage, because that's, I think, the real intention behind this is parking garages are made to be not seen or heard. So there is the summary of the report. And if there are any questions, commissioners. I hope.
I have a question. Is that okay?
Sure.
So I don't know if you remember from the last time we met, Bob. I'm an architect as well.
I didn't know that.
I am. I just am more in real estate development these days. I do not read anywhere in the zoning regulations where it says that every building now has to be classical. So a lot of your comments I find relate back to details and thoughts on classical architecture. And it to me is eliminating modern architecture. I think that that is not good for Norwalk, and I don't think that's the interpretation of zoning, that every single new building in Norwalk is going to look like each other because they have to use the exact same things. So I'm just concerned because I don't understand reading anywhere that every detail has to be classical, everything has to be referenced back to the classical, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be just my one comment. I think I made it before, but I'm saying it out loud now. So I mean, I'm not sure if you want to respond, but that's just how I feel about many of the comments as you point back to classical detailing.
Well, I would say that part of the key is to look at the illustrations, which all speak to a vernacular construction that has certain common elements, and within that, there are certain options for exploring different ideas. I mean, on this project, for example, even though it doesn't go with a strictly classical, if you will, building, the mullion pattern on the first floor windows, it's like, yeah, okay, it's contained within the building envelope, within existing or within defined panels, and it's probably not literally what the zoning says, but I think it's okay.
So these zoning regs, and I know, look, you're like, hey, we're the redevelopment authority. We care about our design review guidelines, not so much about the zoning regs, but the zoning regs had almost nothing to do with design. And now there are 100 pages of design. This is the first project that's come through under those new regulations in any format. And I mean, I think you'll see I think they've already got, I don't know, maybe it's 50 pages of reg changes proposed, which is going to be greatly expanded before they get to a public hearing, I think in November or December, to change the regs, because the intention was good, and I think the regs in general are good, but not every picture, like the arcade frontage, I'm certain that the zoning staff didn't scrutinize the photo of it and say, this is exactly what we want on every project. It was like one of a million pictures that was thrown into the regs, not indiscriminately, but certainly with some thought, but we're going through a growing process. And I think that I know we've taken up a lot of your time, but I think we've attempted to comply with both the zoning regs and the design review guidelines. And out of 100 pages or so of regs, or maybe it's 300 pages of regs, and maybe 25 or 30 of your design review guidelines, we think we've pretty much hit all of them, with literally a handful of points that there's some disagreement on between the sides. And we hope you'll let us see how it goes and approve the plans as submitted.
I just have a couple of points if I may too. So I have the same comment as Jason did. He used the word classical. I'll use the word traditional, Bob. I think that there isn't an image that you showed that wasn't traditional. And so I guess I have the same feeling. We're not, and I think you made reference to clapboard siding. We're not using clapboard siding. We're using shiplap. We've got a flat face in channel reveals. It's a far different look. So and then sometimes we look at a picture to show, hey, you can use this product, but like in the cast stone picture, if you look at the windows, there was no trim on the windows. So I think you're right. It's a general discussion about what works, and I think our proportions work. And one other thing, I think as architects, sometimes we're trying to make the building, as attractive as possible on the outside. But the owner will cite various reports that there are many segments of society who feel really, really uncomfortable in a completely enclosed garage when you do have the opportunity for light and ventilation. And that's why, at least on the public realm area, we'd like to keep it open. Because there are people in society who that is very uncomfortable feeling.
And I think Audiotronics would appreciate that.
Have we resolved any of the questions from redevelopment on the parking area? The number of parking spaces that have to be left open for the public? Wasn't there a question on that?
They're there. The 88 spaces are there.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, so this is a design review. There is elephant there. I mean, there obviously there is a agreement between the owner and the city that's contained in a settlement agreement and a written easement agreement that govern what Mr. Milligan's obligations are and what the city's obligations are. And he's going to have to comply with those. Some of those, I think, can't be, well, one, none of them are part of the design review, which we're here for today. But eventually there's going to be like, whatever he's going to do, maybe he's got some signage he's going to have to propose to the city for approval. I'm not sure that actually comes to the redevelopment authority, but under the agreement, he's got to propose signage for it. He's got obligations, and the city has obligations, and he's going to abide by his obligations under that agreement.
Okay. Anyone else? Any of the other? Mr. Westmoreland? You're on mute.
All right. Excuse me. I think this looks like a really good project. I'm really excited about it. I think you've done a really good job with the design overall. I appreciate the design reviewers' comments as well. I think you have broken up the massing. I mean, it's a big building. It's tall. If the city allows, what is this, 7, 8?
6.
Stories? Yeah, but but it's over the parking garage, which adds even more height. The examples of the massing, that were shown of being separate buildings, those were all 4-story buildings, which, is easier to do. It's harder to do on a building this high. But I think overall you've done a good job of breaking it up. I would agree. I like the windows. I think the real issue isn't the trim, it's the recess of windows. And I understand the type of windows you're using, you probably can't recess them.
So they're actually not recessed. I'm sorry to interrupt. They're actually proud. They're proud by an inch.
So they stick out.
Yes. Yeah, they're proud by an inch. They come with a nailing flange that can be set at any depth. So whatever material they're set in, the trim is proud.
My preference for windows, especially when you're trying to blend in with a existing area, historic area, windows are generally recessed. It's not really, the issue to me isn't really the size of the trim. It's just that the windows are recessed. And I think that's something that probably needs to be made more clear in the regulations. The only thing that I see that I'm actually really concerned about, which is not even a great concern, is just putting some type of screens over the openings that are, obviously allow for ventilation and transparency on the parking garage spaces, on the parking garage that is along the public realm. If there's some type of mesh or screening you're going to do there, or just have it completely open. I think the completely open may be too open.
Ray, what do we have proposed there?
So hold on, I was not gonna say anything and I'm gonna maybe regret it, but I have 3 things I want to say, and the parking is one of the things I want to talk about, and I'll just voice my concerns. I have a teenage daughter who's a waitress, and she goes into garages. And I can't help but remembering a woman with her baby getting raped at the Stanford Mall in a parking garage while her baby was in the car. And I also can't help but notice that it's almost entirely men that design these regulations, that they don't have the same issue going into parking garage. So we may not want to see it or hear it, but if you're in there, you want to feel safe. And if the women are going to park here, they want to feel safe. It needs to be well lit. It needs to be able to see to the public. And I think that we should probably poll or ask the women that are involved that we like and trust in this city and think twice about it before we cover it all up and make it a cave where, parking garages are one of, if not the most popular places to rape people. So just keep that in mind. And then there's two other things I want to say. Bob can stay at any hotel he wants. I wrote a check for $45,000 for this 30-party review. That's more than I've paid to build my house, the architect. So I think it's a little rich to cry poor when that kind of money goes into this type of review. And I hired Ray Sullivan, who's built thousands and thousands and thousands of units because I love Ray and I like his style. We've caved on more than I would have liked to because I like Ray's ideas better. And we spent months trying to please Bob with his ideas on his classical stuff, which that's not really what we want to design. So to the extent we can design what we want and what I think my customers and my public will want, I want to go with Ray. So that's what I'll say about that. And I'm going back to mute.
Ray, the openings of the garage facing 18 Isaacs or Audiotronics in the public realm area, what's proposed there currently?
I'm not
Currently,
suggesting,
it's proposed to be open.
just to be clear, I'm not suggesting to cover it up. I'm just thinking like a, wire mesh or something that's still open, but, that you can still see through, but is just better than blank, completely open where, looks like you can fall out.
Well, David, there are walls that are railing height, so there are restrictions of the type of wall we need to build, when you have a vehicle, parking up against it. So, the falling out, I don't think that's really an issue. So, we can propose the mesh. It's just the desired preference to keep that face open as much as possible, only because, like for instance, on Leonard Street, we have to provide the liner building so we don't look into the garage there. And that's lost opportunity for light and ventilation. So just on the public realm, we're hoping to keep it open.
So David, one of the things that actually we've taken into consideration is that, the building next door, Audiotronics and Underground, they built to their lot line and they have no parking and frankly, it's our right to build to their lot line, which we didn't do. And we're trying to be good neighbors. And we think one of the things about being a good neighbor is for them to be able to have access to this public parking and for it to be visible and a little bit open for them. Otherwise, that retail, their frontage is actually, that's their side yard. They don't have any frontage there. I don't know when or how they decided to put their retail along a lot line on a city-owned lot that had the potential to be built, but their frontage is on Isaacs and it's small. So part of what we're thinking, because putting up some mesh is not expensive. Like, it's not about money or whatever. I think it's being a good neighbor, giving them access to this public parking and probably will keep that retail feasible rather than it just going dead.
I don't see how giving them access to it has anything to do with the openings. Are you familiar with the Sono Collection Mall?
I am.
The parking garage, they put just some simple rails to just break it up. So it doesn't look like a giant, parking garage. And that's really all I'm suggesting here. I'm not suggesting covering up anything so that you make an unsafe place so people can get raped. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't give parking to Audiotronics. I'm just saying from a design aesthetic, it might look better to have like a simple mesh that has, 6-inch openings. I don't even care. I
So
mean,
I totally agree with you.
that's all I'm saying.
I totally
Not
agree with you.
all this other stuff that has nothing to do with design.
Right. I totally agree with you, but what's been proposed is that we make openings that mimic the windows above and, make a big fuss out of that facade. I think that something cool could be done there, along the lines of maybe not mesh, but, there's all sorts of cool things being done in parking garages today. Even that thing that took forever in Stamford at their parking garage has those, geometric mesh coverings at the edges and whatever. I think there's a lot of room for some design and thought there. I just don't think the answer is to match the windows above.
Yeah,
That's
so
that's
to
what
short, can I short circuit us? If David, if you guys, we are happy to consider making the changes you've suggested of some type of architectural, something other than an open area there. And if your guys want to make it a condition or a change, we'll come up with something that works. We don't want it to have to mimic the windows above, but something other than an opening, we'll work on.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, I like the way the rhythm you've established with the columns that do, reflect the windows above. I mean, I'm not suggesting at all doing mullions or anything like that. I'm just saying something. That's fine. That's all I'm asking for.
Right.
deal. It's a deal.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Nope.
One comment, David, I wasn't speaking to you. We already condensed our garage considerably from where we started, like by half. We've covered it very much. I would prefer it to be open for all those reasons I stated. I wasn't speaking directly to you.
And I'm not, I know that, and
Okay.
I didn't mean to imply that. And I'm not saying close it off, because I get you want the ventilation, you want it to be, whatever you put there, it needs to be very porous and transparent.
And wayfinding is also a consideration too, because you don't want to hide the parking. John brought it up. How's the public find this? How do they get to restaurants?
Exactly.
And we want them to be able to find it. So it's definitely a balance. Parking can be nice. And by the way, I'm going to reuse the artwork. And we want people to go look at artwork. You might just take a stroll through there just for the art gallery. But I think it is definitely a balance, and we've already closed it considerably more than I would have liked, to be honest. And we lost probably 15 or 20 parking spaces in the closing up of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, shall I make a motion that we table this until we get the revisions on the parking lot and hear from zoning, more specifically on those 6 open items? Mary, are you okay with that approach? David?
I'm okay with that. Does that hamper the applicant in any way?
I don't think so.
I don't hear anything from the attorney.
No, hard to tell. It may hamper you, it may hamper us, it may hamper no one, to be honest.
I like this project. I want it to move forward. I don't want to put up stumbling blocks. This is the first one through the new zoning code, and I guess there are issues with that the zoning is going to weigh in on. So it probably makes sense. I just want to make sure it's not going to hamper your project in any way.
I would rather you guys approve it with the conditions, and if we have to come back for additional approval, we would. Adam, don't you think that's better?
Yeah, well, I'd rather them approve it with no conditions, but
Yeah, no doubt. But
yeah. I mean, look, either way. I mean, when realistically, when would we next be on an agenda if you didn't act tonight?
Our next meeting is in
Next
3 weeks.
meeting.
Which is when?
Roll it.
There.
Good.
So Adam, that hinders us because we're on tomorrow night.
When are you going to zoning again?
Tomorrow
Tomorrow
night.
night.
And we should be done tomorrow night.
You want to table this for a special meeting then? I'm asking the board. Pending the conditions we've mentioned and the zoning meeting tomorrow night?
You know, frankly, I'm okay on approving it with conditions. Can one of the conditions be that you come back with something for the garage openings?
Absolutely.
You know, and if zoning says something, they say something, you know.
I just want to point out one other thing that's another layer and another wrinkle that you may or may not be thinking, but we're in heavy discussions with 3 major hotel brands that may have some changes to the facade and design, especially signage, which is why we've not talked a lot about signage. So there's a great chance we're coming back to you for other stuff anyway. I'd rather keep the ball rolling to the extent you guys are comfortable with it, where we can say we have approval with conditions. Some of them may become moot. Some of them we might fight more on or, find another path, but I'd rather say it's approved for everyone's sake, not that we're trying to avoid anything. I mean, we're down to 4, 5, 6 items, right?
Right.
Yeah, and by Jason's point, it allows us to move forward with a hotel partner because having approvals makes them, more interested and committed.
Well, so we're now talking about approving this subject to conditions, the conditions being resolving the 6 outstanding issues with zoning and coming back to us with sign design and parking redesign.
What's the parking redesign?
He's talking about the screening.
Openings.
Yeah.
Screening.
Okay.
That's fine with me. I'd second that motion.
Second the motion. So can I call for a vote?
Yep.
All in favor? Looks unanimous. So we're moving forward and subject to those conditions. And we hope to see you back with a signed, so we can see the signs and your thoughts on the parking. So.
Great. Yeah, and thanks for fitting us in with a special meeting. We appreciate it.
And thanks for listening to us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nothing else? No other business?
No.
Everyone's gone? Brian, there's some open issues on with parking. Does Jess have some issues with this parking design?
There was just discussion between TMP and I think economic development with regards to this, but when we send our letter, we can make sure, as I understand, that's going to be worked through the zoning process.
Okay. You're okay drafting the letter with
Yeah, we
conditions
could draft the letter. We'll get it out tomorrow morning.
and subject to resolving the open issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Is everyone okay with that?
Yep.
And looking at everyone else and myself, I think I have to get more light in this room. I it's faded out here. So, all right. No other issues? I call to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? David, your hand went up very fast.
I've got a second exit meeting.
Have a nice evening.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right, take
Thanks.
care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.